The story of this reminds me of a Beatles song, The Long and Winding Road. And I want to take you back to some of the earlier times and how all of this fell together. Some by determination, some by sheer determination, and other things by luck, as it would have it. I was elected for my first term in November of 2012, and before I even took office in January of 2013, I was informed that we had a major problem with Ledgemont. That it was, Ledgemont was having some severe fiscal challenges, and it was projected to be, they already at that time were #1 in the state in terms of being in arrears to the state government, and it was over $2 million. And my concern was, and by the way, I'm a former teacher, retired teacher. My concern was that the state would lose patience and come in and take over Ledgemont. And that's the last thing I wanted. I wanted local control. So, well, how do you get local control? Well, ultimately, and this took a while too, the agreement that was cut, as you well know, was that if Ledgemont agreed to consolidate, then that debt would be forgiven. That was $2 million. So that happened, and Ledgemont then was transferred into Berkshire. Well, here's the other story that was going on at the same time. That was 13 and 14, 15. We were working on that. The first time I met this man was down in Columbus. Do you remember that?
Yes.
There were 4 school districts represented, and at the time, Representative Lynch was, it goes back to my first term, spearheading the effort. And the idea was we knew we had declining population, we knew we had some challenges, and those schools were thinking about consolidating. Now, here's the key. We knew that the local share was going to be high based on wealth. And correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, but Newberry's is like 92% local, 8% state share, something like that. And the lowest indeed was Ledgemont at an 80-20 split. Now keep in mind, in Jefferson where I taught, we were the lucky beneficiaries because we had buildings that dated back to the Johnson administration. That's Andrew Johnson, all right? We got a 66-33 split essentially with the state. And I know as a teacher, I had 3 years in those buildings, how important technology, environmental controls, how new buildings can affect learning. Just a quick aside here, as a history teacher, I knew that in September and then sometimes in April and May, by 6th, 7th period, the kids were worn out because it was so hot, it wasn't air conditioned. That simple change allowed us to stay on pace for the AP exam, which is typically in early May. So I understood full well how new buildings can impact student learning, especially heading into the 21st century. All right, so where does that put us? Well, the first proposal, if you remember, was a $16 million loan that would be repaid over a period of time. Well, I'm thinking myself, my goodness, at Jefferson, it cost us over $20 million to get moving, and that was back a few years before this. 16 wasn't nearly going to be enough. Well, the talks continued, and we progressed, and then the ideas started to come. What if, in looking at the numbers, we could somehow, and I say we are all blessed to have Representative LaTourette working for us, Senator Eklund, and then at the time, Senator Cafaro, because we're all on the same page as we move forward on this. So my thinking was, well, the state looks at Geauga County as being a rich county, right? You understand that. So if we could somehow come up with a 50-50 split, my folks in Geauga would understand that's the best we could do. That would be fair to you, fair for the state. But what would be the buy-in? Well, the buy-in then, and the carrot would be, and this is something that we hear a lot in the state, efficiency through consolidation. Well, looking at the numbers that Tracy presented to us tonight, we knew where the numbers were going, at least on paper, but we didn't, and I don't know if we still know exactly where those kids, probably ECOT, maybe homeschooling, and that sort of thing. But my thinking was, if we could somehow put a deal together where there'd be consolidation and a 50-50 split, that might be able to push a program through the legislature and then afford, and again, this is permissive language, no districts had to move together to make this a reality, to afford the people back home a chance to vote on something like that. So here's where the plot thickens. I had a number of discussions with the School Facilities Commission, and we started kicking around ideas, and my thought was, well, what if, because Ledgemont was already in the mix, what if we crafted that legislation so that Ledgemont became our base, and whichever district in the consolidation or transfer had the lowest local share, that would be our starting point for negotiations. So, Ledgemont, with that 80-20 split, was the best we could do, and by crafting this legislation to make it retroactive, because there was another district that also consolidated about that same time, if we could put that together as a baseline, that 80-20 split, and then the enhancement that if you then consolidated another 25 potentially, and then if you put it on a college campus, we would get to be about a 50-50 split. Makes sense? And we had tacit approval and then formal agreement that with the administration, big shout out to the administration, love working with Tim Keene and the folks. Then we were able to craft this into legislation. It got a hearing. And Sarah and I were able to get this through the House last May, wasn't it? Or was it June? Yeah. It's before the summer. All right, before we went on summer recess. But here's the catch. It happened so late we couldn't get it over to the Senate. All right? Now here's the problem with bills. If you don't get them passed during that particular General Assembly, they die, and you have to start all over again. And we weren't coming back into session until after November. So throughout the whole summer, that bill that had been passed in the House was just sitting there going nowhere. And if we came back in November and there was more delays throughout the month, committee hearings and other bills that had more gravitas. We get into December, and literally within the last few hours of lame duck, this bill still needs a hearing in the Senate. And here's where the luck comes in. It just so happens that I had introduced a bill for Public School Appreciation Week. A bill that nobody could, I mean, who's going to stand opposed to that? So the plan was, after Sarah and I talked, that we could add 148 as an amendment in that bill and get it through the Senate and then back to the House in conference committee so that we could get it passed in the 11th hour. Well, it took a lot of friendships on both sides of the aisle to be able to maneuver the calendar, and don't listen to this, Dustin, but you know how this works, to get it moved onto the calendar so that we could get a quick hearing on the bill so it could then be added as an amendment into 438. So Senator Lehner, who was chair of the Senate Education Committee, called me and said, John, are you good with this? Well, yeah, we're good with this. Sarah and I are on board. Let's get it going. She said, well, we're going to have a hearing this afternoon. Okay. I don't have any time to really prepare. No notes, nothing, and I have to make this presentation. And Sarah was busy with her caucus staff at that time. So I went in and I made the sale. That here is a program that can benefit many students. My local people are willing to make those sacrifices. It's good for business in terms of producing a workforce, good for the growth of Geauga County. There's an ag component with it, and this is what I think really convinced some, and I say that for this reason. I made the comment, and you have to know Senator Haidt, who's on this committee, former coach, in fact, Ben Roethlisberger played for him out in Western Ohio. I said, the OSU extension is a chip shot away, 9-iron shot away from Kent State, correct? I said, but for you, Cliff, it's a 3-wood. At any rate, mixing in a little humor so that they were tuned into me. The collaboration between OSU Extension and Kent State is another selling point that makes this so special with related to ag. Ag is one of our strong businesses here in Geauga County, and it plays into our strength. So you have the College Credit Plus, definitely. A big shout out to our good folks from Kent State who have been partners all along. Ag, the business community, and who wins? Our kids. Now, what's so special about this? For all of us, our most precious resource is our children, is it not? And don't we want to offer the very best we can for them with the means that we have? And wouldn't it be great if we were able to stimulate economic growth, new jobs in Geauga County, so that some of those kids who wanted to stay here would have the opportunity to do so and to rebuild us from the inside out? So for all those reasons, got through the Senate subcommittee, or the Senate committee, was approved, came back to the House, and I think it was 2 in the morning that it was agreed upon, and Sarah and I were just joyfully anticipating that vote. And we kept these guys informed all along the way. With one closing note here. It took a team to put this together. Not only my fellow legislators, but the camaraderie. I can remember the time we took a field trip down to Columbus for testifying when Jared was on board, Jared Tudor, former dean here. But the partnerships, the vision, the unity that this group has and Prime continues to have is something very, very special. And what you're doing here is an opportunity to position Geauga County so uniquely with respect to the rest of the state. You are in the vanguard of the 21st century education. And I applaud you for that, and I thank you for your support of this group and for all that you do. I'm just really excited. As a former teacher, I'm jumping out of my socks. So thanks, and we're here to then answer any questions you might have.
Did you know we're weekly in print and daily online? So be sure to check out GeaugaMapleLeaf.com for your latest local news. And don't forget, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter.